Hello and welcome to another episode of the Nono Show podcast that I remembered to say correctly. This is your host, Craftsdwarf, here with my co-host, Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
I don't have a witty thing. I feel like I was going to think of like a Precure joke here. And now I'm just on the floor kicking and screaming.
No, like a little prince, maybe.
Mentally, he is me.
Mentally, I am here, and just post a picture. Anyway, we are discussing the original Futari Precure, the first season in what is now a 17, 18 year long franchise. Like, it's still going strong. Like, we've talked about Precure seasons before, but they were, ongoing, or recently ended, rather, where this is the first time we're talking about a long concluded season. And I think we've both seen, obviously, have you seen Precure seasons that we haven't discussed on the channel?
No, because we've talked about Hugto and Star Twinkle, and we're talking about this.
Gotcha, okay. And of course, for the foreseeable future, we are probably going to talk about any series that you finish at least, so, anyway, I have seen a few more, but I have not seen, I think the second oldest one that I've seen was, Go Princess? Oh, no, Heart Catch. So it's still, there's still, huge gaps that I haven't seen any of. But, we watched Futari. Well, just to be transparent, I watched Futari Precure, last year. Last January. But I still feel like I remember it well enough to talk about it to a degree, where Mathwiz just finished it after the last, few months or maybe a little bit more, just general watching. Yeah. Non-spoiler talk. What did you think about Futari Precure?
It definitely is the first season of a really long, franchise, iterative franchise, I guess. Multiple installments. I don't know, because it definitely. I think there's probably a degree to which, certain expectations I had for this series not playing out, might have influenced my general kind of apathy I ended up having with it by not even by the midpoint. It was actually pretty early that I felt like this series was kind of just it doesn't really have the same kind of punch that other seasons I've seen, which granted I've only seen two.
And then the start of Tropical Rouge, right? But
yeah.
So still, and it is definitely different. Just even the fact that I would say for the first, until, whatever the series was that came after Precure 5, they were still very much trying to figure out what the fuck Precure is, right? Because, the fact that the series after this is a sequel, right? Nowadays, they don't do that. They're purely this, 50, we know going in, it's going to be 50 episodes long, give or take. So for a whole year, we just have this cast of characters, this group of antagonists, and that is it, right? Where in this case, it doesn't change antagonists. Well, it kind of does. It changes antagonist groups, but it's they've, to my understanding, it was originally planned to be 26 episodes, and I would have to find a source for that, and hopefully I'll remember to, and I'll send it to you. But, which is kind of interesting to think about how the series was let's just do this 26 episode Toei Magical Girl show, it'll be fine, and then accidentally becomes a nearly 20-year-long franchise, right? That hasn't stopped since 2004 when this series started. So, and in a way that kind of occurs in the narrative, which I'll talk about later, spoilery, but as a result of not necessarily having knowing how to do Precure in that sense, especially looking at it coming from, we both started with the later series, right? Your Hugto was your first one, and A la Mode was the first one I really watched. I did start with Mabusakai. And, those are series where it's very much the series knows what it is, and it knows what it's doing, where, Futari wa just kind of, it is what it is. It's just not necessarily what we latch to from Precure, I guess I would say. Because it is still very much they fight monsters every week. Toys, they use the toys to transform but yeah, like the iterative nature is part of the appeal to me because like if you don't like this season, well, next year they're gonna have a new season with new characters, so there's always something, right? But I guess to talk more about this season specifically is like, Nagasa's really cute. Honoka is good, I guess. Like, I have like 70 plus screen caps of Nagisa making dumb faces. Like, I don't know what it was about her and her design or her person, something. I just like, I have a lot of faces of her being good and dumb.
Yeah, no, I agree, and yeah, there will be many of them in in the video in the video because now like with this Precure season though, like I don't know what like the average anime fan screen caps. So I probably still have like way more than that, but also
Yeah,
like compared to what I
screen
normally
caps at
do,
all.
like
Yeah.
compared to other shows I've done, like Doremi, Cardcaptor Sakura. This is a relatively like smaller, less frequent amount.
Yeah, also the production isn't like as strong as I'm used to in especially in some of the later seasons. Like I just watched Go Princess, which is probably the most solidly and consistently well produced Precure season I've seen. Right. So like remembering back to Futari, like it does have some moments of like really cool animation and stuff, but it's definitely not the norm.
Yeah.
And so, right, but I guess it's funny because I kind of come at it from the inverse because I don't take screen caps very often, but I do have 70 screen caps of Nagisa somehow. I don't know why, but I do. And the one I was going to mention, this one in particular, I remember because I paused to take that screen cap because I'm just like, good smile, good girl. Because the reason she had that smile is because fucking at Meppel, I think, her fairy was like, "Oh, you look good this morning," and she's like, "Really?" And she goes up to the mirror, and then he's like, "Nah." And then I pause to take the screen cap, and then I go back to show, and he's like, "Nah, I'm kidding. Fuck you." I'm like, "You're gonna die. I'm going to kill you," because that she does look good. Look at her, she's cute. So that one just stuck out to me, because I was like, "You piece of shit, motherfucker." But I guess the fairies were handled a little differently than I'm used to, where like they were also literally the transformation devices.
Yeah.
And also there was like a romance thing between the two of them that came up once or twice or something, and I'm like, okay. And it's like, so yeah, it's just like there's some neat little differences. But as far as like, yeah, the story goes, I think like it very much shows its episodic nature. Like, there's definitely, there's one antagonist I think we both agree is like the standout best antagonist from the show.
Yep.
Probably the best character from the show, maybe. As much as because like I did like Nagisa and Honoka at the end, but at the end of the day, like they don't have really strong arcs. Again, the show wasn't even planned to go for as long as it was. And another thing, I've all kind of heard these things secondhand, which is like I should do my own research. But another thing is like the reason Splash Star happened was because after Max Heart, the show writers were basically like, we can't write any more stories with these fucking characters. So they did Splash Star as a way to do something that's still very much like this, because Precure was successful from the get-go.
Yeah.
So Splash Star is still like following that Futari mold, but with new characters who they can do something different with, which I don't know what that is. I haven't seen it yet. But and of course, after that, we have Precure 5, where at that point it starts to dig more into the Super Sentai-esque team structure, and then which it did for 2 seasons, and then after that, finally moved to iterative nature, where it remains today. Yeah.
Yeah, I do hope that like those later seasons, like I'm able to get more out of them than I was with this season. Because because like you said with Nagisa and Honoka, it's not that like they don't grow or anything as characters, but there's just like not as strong of like a tangible through line, or like a lot of the times like a problem I kind of had with this series as it went along is that, I mean, and this is sometimes the case with other Precure seasons, that they'll have episodes where fights just kind of need to happen, but except like with this season, I felt like a lot of the episodes, like a major, like more than I'm used to, were just kind of like the antagonist felt sort of like disconnected from the story of that episode, or like the thing they were focusing on. And a lot of the time I'd be like, okay, we have an interesting sort of setup here. Like that they're whatever the character or the thing they're focusing on, or like however many times that Nagisa is at her like field hockey or whatever sport it is. How did I forget?
Lacrosse?
I
Was it lacrosse?
I don't know. They're very similar, and I don't remember like which is. But anyway, yeah, like however many times that like her team has a game going on, and then it's like the antagonists show up and pull her away from the game, and she shows up at the last minute, and it's just like I want to see the game. I want to see like this group of characters like do the thing, and it's just like it just feels like more of a like background part when the fights. I don't know, like there are fights that are connected to the plot of the episode, even if it's like, things characters do, like the episode where they did the play, and so like they're fighting as Romeo and Juliet, and it's like that was cool. Okay, like I can work with that. It also, I guess, really didn't help that I wasn't too fond of the antagonist either, save like that one character.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I won't spoil it until the second part, because I also am planning. I've been planning a video on this show for a while. I just need to like actually watch Max Heart. Because like there is like a really an idea overall that I think is pretty neat in how it like frames both the conflict of this show and also like happens to work with the fact that the show is never ending. But so it's like it definitely works in a way I think is kind of interesting, but it doesn't necessarily make the show more enjoyable to watch, if that makes sense. Because like it's disconnected and like right, and it just like there's Nagisa is in love with a guy. And then the sports stuff, and then like a lot of stuff just kind of happens, but it's like and there's still like cute moments or funny moments, yeah, and it's what you're saying about the fights not necessarily being involved in the plot of the episode. I don't really remember that or any specific examples per se because it's been a while since I watched the show, but that has been something I've been thinking about, like because I'm also watching Sailor Moon, and I feel like the way later Precure seasons do it, where they literally have like, especially when they literalize like whatever the theme of the show is in like how the antagonists like in Tropical Rouge, right, where they'd steal motivation from random people, and then while they themselves like it very much like calls attention to here's what the show is fucking doing, right? And of course like Hugto does it, Alamo does it, Go Princess does it, right? So but this is the first series, so it doesn't really have that. So by like if and since the later shows do, they're more able to like strongly connect what's happening in the fight with what's happening in the episode, I suppose. And also since it usually like victimizes actual people who are like in the setting and we're probably interacting with the characters, where and sometimes in Futari it just happens. So
yeah, like with this season, I definitely like what observations people seem to take from the series sound more interesting than my actual experience with it. Which is, I think if anything, I said this in like the tweet I did when I finished it. But like, if anything, it might just be that like my expectations are set as high as they are because like later seasons
Precure,
are
right?
as good. Yeah, Precure has like established this like bar of quality in my head. And so for like this to be disappointing is more to say that like I expected a lot and just kind of got like okay.
Yeah, no, because I would say it's my like least favorite season of Precure that I've finished. And I still give it like a strong 6 light 7, right? Which is still like a solid score, all things considered. It's just like when I compare that to like Alamode or Hugto, which are like literally like real like decent to strong 9s. Alamode might be one of my favorite anime ever if I rewatch it, right? Like when I'm looking at that and I'm like that's my how I started Precure with those two series. It's like I get where you're coming from, right? And maybe that would be more tempered if you'd seen one of the series that like Healing Good I enjoyed, but I'd still give it around the same score as Futari wa. Mahu Sakai I'm a little worried about because it's like the punching bag. No one likes it in the Precure fan base. Well, I'm sure no one is obviously an exaggeration, but because Futari wa is really liked. I know what likes it. Apparently it's people in the Precure fan base like it. It's one of the only ones with an official release, so or official subtitles rather. So it's like one of the only ones you can legally watch at all. yeah, I guess like so when we say it's like not necessarily our thing, but it also is its own different thing. And if you like that more than you like some of the maybe some of that stuff the later Precure seasons do, that's fine. It's just like this is where we're coming from. So yeah. All right. Anyway, moving on to spoilers. Kiria is good.
Yeah, he was definitely the most interesting antagonist. Maybe like the most interesting character in the whole show. You might be right.
Yeah.
Especially like the ending. The ending. He's a real boy.
Yes. Like he was he found humanity and he helped the Precures and he was reincarnated as a real boy and it was very good and satisfying. And even before then, I think the episode that really made me go, oh yeah, this character, I think he's pretty interesting, was when he was like, well, because look, it's so good, and not every show, like, okay, so I'm gonna talk more about Sailor Moon just because it's like the one, because even later Precure seasons don't do this as much as no, I'm not gonna say as much as I would like, but it's like when it happens, it's really good. So far my favorite antagonists in Sailor Moon were these two characters who disguised as students and interacted with the main characters in like human disguises, right? Because, and I like that, because it adds, like, it's kind of the same thing I was talking about in Princess Tutu, where you have these like conflicting dynamics, right? And so Kiria, he becomes a high schooler and he interacts with the main characters and it adds to his character, right? So it's like, because mostly I remember the episode where he goes to like the farm with Honoka and he's resistant to like putting in effort and doesn't get it, right? But through Honoka he's able to like start to understand that being that sort of being human thing.
Yeah,
I just remember that episode sort of standing out to me as far as like, oh, something interesting that the show is doing. That's neat to see. Because usually it's not like super interesting. It's just like, fun or cute at most. And maybe just like, yeah, this is happening. It's fine at, usual. Like there's nothing really like negative I have to say about the show, I guess, but it's just, not super stand out a lot of the time. But yeah, Kirio was good. And, yeah.
I think I also, like, those episodes were kind of interesting because he was also working off of the female antagonist. Like, there would be episodes where they were both present and kind of, like, working together or kind of, like, that sort of contrast of, like, his desire to kind of be, like, a human and, like, live in that world versus, like, his obligations to, the dark zone.
Right.
And that was neat.
Yeah, no. Now you mentioned her, I just remembered one of my favorite jokes from the show, and I think
I think we might have the same joke in mind.
Is they were in like they went to like the mountains, I think, to have a vacation, and they're like, I think Nagisa was talking about like, oh, there's no way someone's from the dark zone's gonna be here, and then she like opens up a cabinet, and she's like there hiding, and then she closes it, and she's like, what the fuck, and then she opens it, and she's gone, and.
Yeah, because she, like, slides over into the other, like, cabinet door that's closed. And then, like, she falls out and she's just, like, literally a square. It was so good. If I want to be mean, I would say it was the only good joke in the series. But that's definitely not true. There were other times where it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just like, wow, Nagisa, you're so cute and stupid. I love you. She's naturally funny by virtue of being the patented Nono show good and dumb. Right? So, like, I can't remember any other jokes right now, but it's also been a year, so forgive me for my sins.
Yeah, no, I've watched it. I'm the one who's seen it recently. And,
yeah, there were good parts. What good parts? Anyway, moving on.
See, so the thing that I found interesting as like an observation I saw other people make.
I was actually wondering about that. Go ahead.
What the whole thing about like this season is apparently like has something to do with like nihilism and like the rejection of that.
Are you referring to What the What's tweet about where he listed a bunch of anime with female protagonists, or did someone else mention that?
No, it might have just been him, but I was also kind of like tying it into things you had said about like how, like especially in the second half, how like one of the antagonists is like the Japanese salaryman, and he literally like jumps out of a window of a giant building.
Right. Yeah. No. Because What the What said that because I talked to him about it. So it's like, which is because once but hey, nihilism, wait, what mentioned that? Is Mathis just quoting things like third hand from
Third
me?
hand.
Right? Like, because or maybe second hand, but anyway, yeah, so, no, yeah, well, because like people go, oh, magical girl series aren't dark. And I haven't gotten to the dark stuff in Sailor Moon that people talk about yet.
But this season literally has the Dark King. What do you mean
No.
it's not dark?
Of course, like, I'm thinking, I'm, quoting, like, bad faith, people commenting on Magical Girls because they watch Madoka and like it, and it's different from other Magical Girl shows. And then speaking as Madoka is, like, not only my favorite Magical Girl show, but also my second favorite anime of all time. But I say that as someone who likes Magical Girl shows. And yeah, here's Futari Precure having, like, literal suicide imagery as in the second half of the show, the Dark Lords, like, he takes over people who are literally, like, giving up on their lives, right? And you can read that in a nihilistic way, like, they just, it doesn't matter. Like, they just would rather not exist. And so yeah, like the salaryman who jumps off out of the window, the girl who walks into the middle of the road to get hit by a car, the doctor who goes to the roof to get struck by lightning, and those are the antagonists of the second half of the show who he commandeered. And that was really where I think I started to pick up on it, because like just that first episode where the salaryman jumps out of the window, I'm just like, holy shit, right? Like, I didn't expect to see that in a children's show.
Yeah, and then like the part where everybody just forgets that he was there too is
yeah, it really stood out to me, right? Where it's almost kind of like it's almost kind of like an induced nihilism. Like they kind of go, it doesn't matter, and then they just like move on with their lives almost, which isn't really what's happening, but that's just kind of what I ended up like thinking about. Yeah, and I guess to sort of like talk about more about my reading of that aspect of the show is like, because yeah, the way it ends, I think, is really because the Dark Lord, the Dark King, he's talking about how, like, he is, the dark, everything will eventually be reduced to darkness, to nothing, which is kind of just how, like, nature works, entropy, right? The universe, the sun is just, everything's going to not be one day, right? And what struck me is that, like, the Precure's response isn't like, no, we're going to stop you, right? We're going to save everything. Instead, it's like, we're just going to keep fighting. Right? So they're accepting that what he's saying isn't wrong, but they're also saying that in the moment of their lives right now, they're going to keep living. They're accepting the sort of existentialist argument over the nihilism, I guess. And I guess a lot of the other, like, loose elements of the show actually kind of work really well towards this theme, I think. Like, Nagisa having this unrequited love towards a boy she likes, right? Like, does that matter? Like, maybe she's just gonna fall out of love with him and grow up and marry someone else, right? Like, that doesn't matter. Or the sports team thing they do all the time. Like, they're not going for nationals or anything, it's just, like, a fun thing that they're doing in the moment, but they're still trying their hardest at it, right? Like, even if it doesn't matter at the end of the day, which you can say, because it's all just gonna go away, in the moment it does matter, right? So... Precure, they're going to keep fighting, and because it does matter to them, right? So I like that aspect, and I guess what's also more interesting to me is how, again, that ties to, like, what I've heard the rumors of Precure's production, where, like, they started a show and, yeah, it's just going to end? No. No, it's not going to end. You're here forever. So, like... in that sense, like, Precure is a series that keeps going, and because, like, I've even said, like, it was more in the Fairy Tail series where I say, oh, the characters have to keep fighting, like, there's always another big threat, like, why does it matter if it's just a continuous struggle, right? Like, I sort of took that nihilistic stance, right? So, and you can make that argument against, like, Precure, or even shows of similar, like, ilk, like Super Sentai, where it's like, okay, 50 episodes, it builds up, they save the world, and then next week there's another bad, or even in the moment, like, there's always another bad guy. There's always, like, you could take that stance, but Precure kind of, like, responds to it, by saying, like, in the moment, it matters, right? So from some people, maybe they don't like the show. This show doesn't matter to them, but another season of Precure does, right? So, like, in the moment, that show matters, right? And I just like that message and how it kind of works.
So you're basically telling me that even though I didn't like Futariwa, because I like later seasons of Precure, I actually do like Futariwa.
That's the other thing. Is, like, so you probably noticed the Zakena, right? Their designs were referred to on in Hugto Precure with the Oshimaida. They both have the purple with the face and the yellow eyes, right?
Oh my god! I didn't consider
yeah.
that the design elements are similar.
That's also similar with the megapathogerms in Heal and Good Precure, and there's probably other series that do that too. So it's almost because the Dark Lord even says like the darkness is never going. I think the darkness is never going to go away and be defeated, right? So every Precure season is also in its own sense kind of continuing the fight against darkness, right? And there's even a series like Go Princess Precure also kind of has a similar element where it deals with like dreams, and it sort of reconciles that hope and despair are part of dreams. Like it reconciles with the darkness instead of rejecting it, right? So it's still kind of addressing its ideas in a similar way as Futari is. So it's just a really interesting, like, it kind of, I even thought about like how we talked about a few weeks ago with Dragon Ball about how like there's always a stronger person is just a good theme for the like in general that happens to work for the story that happens to be way longer than originally intended, right? And so this is kind of similar where it's just like it just does this thing that in its own context works for the show. But when viewing it as this longer franchise, I think it's a little bit even more interesting, right? And so at the end of the day, like, even if I am still kind of like middling on Futari Precure, I did get some interesting stuff out of it, and we'll hopefully do a more scripted, sensible version of what I just said in a video. Or maybe I actually have like a very bad script written that needs to be like completely restructured, and there's way more I could go into. And obviously I've only watched like half the shows I need to watch for this, because like I can't just like, yeah, let's talk about Honoka and Nagisa, but I haven't watched Max Heart yet. Like, so yeah, but
honestly, now that you mentioned the thing about the Oshimaida, like I know that every season has their own like iteration of the,
and they don't always look like that, right?
Well, yeah, but that you bring that up specifically as Hugto as an anniversary season now makes me kind of want to look for that the next time I'll rewatch it eventually, because I assume like as I go through these seasons, eventually when I get back to Hugto, I'm not just gonna skip it, right? Like, especially now that I would understand all the references.
No way, right? No, that's exactly part of what, because that's also my plan, is to watch every Precure season from before Hug. Well, actually, I guess I've already seen every season after Hugto. That kind of precludes it, right? So yeah, that's my current plan, is the same thing. Well, I'm also going to rewatch A la Mode, because that was the first one I watched, and that one like clicked with me in a way so I want to rewatch it and see if like I still feel that way after having seen every other season. But I'm really excited for the Hugto Precure rewatch, with knowing the references, like the whole like the 2-part anniversary special with all the characters come in, like there'll be just extra context. Like, I know you now, right? Like, I want that. Give it to me. I just need to watch like 700 episodes or something first, and you need to watch even more.
I think the only other like big main point that I could think to bring up here, because I did mention earlier that like I had some expectations for this show that didn't pan out as far as like the structure of the way things would go, and I think like part of that comes down to like having seen the opening before and just like seeing like a lot of the, I mean, like at the very least, like in the opening and in like the opening shots of the show, even, there's like the scene of the two characters walking and like what's the word? They're like walking in different directions, and it's like the sporty girl and the like nerdy girl.
Yeah.
That like there are these two characters from like these two different worlds, but as Precure they have to like work together and form friendship, and I'm like, okay, so we're gonna get like some episodes of them like coming to like become friends and like working through sort of the different. It's a really like, I guess it's kind of a basic premise, but like it's effective, and so like I guess that's what I was expecting, that like these characters are so different. They look at these shots that are like setting them up as like these different, they like completely ignore each other. They're not even aware of each other. But then it's just like after the first episode, it's like, okay, I guess we're friends now, and it's like they had one fight, a couple episodes, or it might have been like near the end of the first core.
I thought it was like in episode like 6 or something. Maybe they had multiple fights and I don't remember right now.
Maybe, but I don't remember. But yeah, they had. I remember there being like one big fight Maybe it was earlier than I thought it was, but like that was kind of it. So, but then like when if what you said is true, and I hope you can find a source for that because I think that would be.
I'll ask the person I heard it from and see if they can help me out because.
But
I feel
if what you said was true about this series was originally planned to be shorter and then got extended, then it would make more sense why there wasn't time to flesh out those or why there weren't earlier episodes of them like being in conflict with each other, because if they were on a tighter schedule, then they wouldn't have had time to do that or didn't think that they had time to do that. But especially like with this season being an average season of Precure, it's like 50 episodes or 49, whatever. You would think that like, especially with it just being these two characters compared to later seasons where it's a team of like bare minimum 4, if not 5 or 6. So there's just like less to work with as far as like a main cast. So like I think that was part of it also, that like if the earlier episodes did more to like work with a contrast between the two and then build that friendship over time, it would have I think like helped to fill some of that some of the like 48 some of the like 49 episodes of the series did end up getting, where it was just like there were definitely episodes where I didn't feel much was happening. It was like I'm not particularly interested in the conflict of this episode or like the set piece of it. And every Precure season kind of has that point where like that's not to say that like these episodes don't tie into the themes or like they don't matter. But there usually is kind of a point in, with every season where it's like, it can't be like perfection constantly, right? Especially with it being such a series where they've gone through this routine over and over again. Like there's usually a stretch where things are like, I don't want to say bad, but like not as like great or epic as like, you can only, just by the nature of it being as long as it is, it's really hard to like maintain that hype throughout, I guess. Like not every episode can be like big character climax sort of deal, or
especially with again the franchise is ongoing. Like even if it goes between different series with staff rotations, like the staff is constantly working on the show like year round. That you can't just like be full blast on point making this like amazingly tightly written thing and not expect your staff to just like burn out and explode, right?
Well, even just like thinking of like contextualizing it through the current season, Tropical Rouge right now, like there were the introductory episodes which are going to be like inherently more compelling because it's establishing stuff, and then once you establish stuff you have to like or rather introduce stuff, and then like you establish after that like a sort of like baseline of like what are these characters doing, like the feel of the show sort of thing, and those episodes are important too. It's just I don't know when I feel like I'm now just talking in circles.
No, I understand what you mean because the show Tropical Rouge did have like a climax episode recently, but it's still overall going to be like coasting on its established its tone until later on when there's some kind of shift. Well, I was just gonna say, like, I guess with Futari, why most of it is coasting, if that makes sense. Because like, I guess I feel like there was one kind like episode 11. I remember standing out to me because like Nagisa gets like really pissed, and because I think her brother was in danger, and I don't remember more coming of that, but it was definitely like a bit more like the emotions of the episode were definitely different. And of course, at the middle of the show and the end of the show, you have and there's some others like there's definitely stuff that happens, but there's definitely a lot of episodes where it's like does this episode need to happen? Like does it add that much to the story as a whole? And so I can understand that even that feeling being part of a drain when it comes to just like thinking about how your overall feelings of the show as you watch it.
And I think also comparing this to even stuff like Doremi that came before it, where Doremi very clearly sets up this sort of atmosphere that we have this class of characters and we can get like all these little episodes focusing on each individual sort of person. And there's like enough variety and like elements to work with to keep things sort of engaging. And I did think it was enjoyable when Futariwa was able to do that. Like, the episode focusing on one of Nagisa's friends, Shiho, and like her anxiety with like the sport and not feeling like she was good enough. And it's like, okay, that's cool. This is neat.
Yeah. See, I think I just realized what maybe the problem is, or part of the problem is, because again, Precure wasn't necessarily planned to be the length it is. So like, because I hadn't thought about Doremi as sort of like the other end of the spectrum, so to speak. Because like the later Precure seasons, they know how long they're going to be, so they can sort of introduce. Okay, here's how many main characters we have. Here's how many and they could just introduce stuff as like they know they need it, right?
Yeah.
Where Doremi, I think it was I don't know about its production, but it wouldn't surprise me at all that it was expected to go on for a long time. So from the beginning, they established like, okay, here's a class full of characters. Even if we don't, and I think they did get to all of them in the first season, but they continued to further the most interesting ones in the later seasons anyway, right? So, so that leaves Futariwa as kind of like this awkward middle point where it's like it was intended to be shorter. So instead of like, so they had to stretch what little cast they did have out to, the 50 episodes we saw, and then the 100 episodes that the show is, right? And apparently the writers didn't want to do it after that point. So it kind of like, again, the planning of it didn't really like allow it to fill its length, so to speak. So yes, it was stretched too thin, basically. Is what seems to be the case. But
I think just like thinking ahead to Max Heart, I don't know, I maybe I'm like in a sense like already placing too much expectations on particular elements. Like I'm really hoping that the new character they introduce does enough to like shake up my relationship with the show. Like I hope she's good and that I appreciate her, because otherwise I'm definitely like taking a break and moving on to some different magical girl stuff after this, because I don't know if I'm ready for 49 more episodes of this cast. Yeah. To be honest, like it's not that I don't like Nagisa and Honoka. It's just kind of like,
this daily magical girl episode thing was supposed to be enjoyable. Yeah, and I guess like I am interested in seeing Max Heart. Partly because I need to make a fucking video. But I am also curious in Splash Star and Mahoutsukai. Because those are the series that also kind of do the 2 Precure formula. The Mahoutsukai does it later add a 3rd Precure like Max Heart does. But to my knowledge, those are the only, like every other series, like I think, I guess Heartcatch starts out with 2, but like I think like a core in, it gets the 3rd one and then later a 4th. But every other one starts with like minimum 3. Right. So, the 2 Precure thing is very much kind of like left in Futariwa, and the one season that nobody likes, Mahoutsukai. So I'm a little curious about it, and to see like because it's different, right? It's something I'm gonna get out of Precure that I won't get out of most of the seasons of it. So
yeah,
even if I didn't also, like it,
looking back to Doremi again, like how much did Momo do to really like change up sort of, like not in like a grand sense, like oh this is a different show now, but like. She added a lot when she was introduced, and so like I'm hoping it's the same. Even if this character doesn't have the same like personality type of like good and dumb, but like I'm just hoping that like there's even just having that 3rd character and like being able to potentially do more with I don't know, just having more variety for things to do in episodes. I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know when that will be, but because we have to finish Cardcaptor Sakura first, and then I don't know. We're still ongoing with Ojamacha Doremi, and maybe we'll watch a shorter magical girl show. I don't know.
Yeah, Cardcaptor Sakura is going to be a nice palate cleanser because I'm already like halfway through it, and I know that I love it. So it's like okay, just like start fresh with Max Heart after that, and hopefully any sort of like negativity I kind of had feeling towards this season, I can kind of like push that aside.
And then you watch the first episode of Max Heart and you're like, never mind, I've made a mistake.
No.
All right, that sounds like it about covers it. So thank you for listening to this, probably the shortest episode of the Nono show. Even shorter than the duck. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.